It's true that some things change as we get older. But if you're a woman over 40 and you're dealing with insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, and weight gain, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. And with MIDI Health, you can get help and stop pushing through it alone. The experts at MIDI understand that all these symptoms can be connected to the hormonal changes that happen around menopause. And MIDI can help you feel more like yourself again. Many healthcare providers aren't trained to treat or even recognize menopause symptoms. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts. They're dedicated to providing safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions for dozens of hormonal symptoms, not just hot flashes. Most importantly, they're covered by insurance. 91% of MIDI patients get relief from symptoms within just 2 months. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
Mochi Health is a long-term weight loss solution personalized to fit your unique needs and goals. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who are on a mission to listen. Eligible patients can access custom-formulated GLP-1 medications at an affordable, set price and get them delivered to their home each month. No insurance required, FSA and HSA accepted. With 24/7 customer service available, Mochi Health is here to partner with you on your journey to a healthier life. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com.
All right, we're back with Michael's Escaped Alcatraz with Ken and Mike. We're back in the house now. We're back in our inside studio. Everybody's in their homes.
Yes, we're back.
We were on the road to the Rock in Alcatraz. Spent a long weekend there, and it was very successful for you guys. You guys had a lot of people there. You guys, it looks like you sold a lot of books, and as you can tell from some of the footage, we have a lot of footage, and we only put out a little bit of the footage while you guys were there taking Q&As. But you got the best of the best there, and lots of great questions, a lot of interesting people, a lot of people from around the globe. And they had and everybody knew about Alcatraz. It's like a world-renowned place. And so how do you guys, after looking at the stuff, the 2 podcasts or 3 podcasts that, doing what we did as far as the dungeon and the Q&As and stuff like that. Anything you want to reflect on and talk about?
I'd probably say the biggest thing I took away from it was, probably the park rangers. I love the public coming up and talking to us and asking questions, especially the young kids. I was very impressed with how many young kids were interested in the story and wanted to know more. But the park rangers, I've had such a weird experience with them over my years of going out to Alcatraz, and to see them come up and, purchase books, wanted us to sign them, was actually asking questions about things that happened, like at my grandmother's funeral, and how that they plan to integrate this into their talk when they're taking people walking around. And I was just totally blown away by the parks part of it.
I think that's an interesting thing to mention, that now after the book has been published, originally they didn't want to feature it at Alcatraz, and now they do. And not only did they feature it, they had you guys come up there, but now they're going to incorporate the pieces of the book, the story that you guys wrote, into their tour. I think that's fascinating. That's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. I wonder if I haven't heard we didn't do the auditory tour because obviously we didn't have time to do all that, but I'm curious if they're going to kind of amend that at all while doing that. And maybe they'll move the guitar into the right cell.
Well, we'd actually gotten an email or a text from somebody who'd been on the tour, and they were saying in the tour that whoever was the park ranger they were with was recommending the book. And as you said, we're bringing up points about things that we bring up in the book. So it's already sort of permeating the flavor of what they're saying to visitors. And of course, as Ken mentioned, a couple of the park rangers came up to us and talked to us, and they bought the book. And you figure those are the last people who are going to buy it. They see this every day. It's, they're not buying trinkets from the bookstore. They're going through it all the time. And yet they wanted to get it. They wanted to talk to us and ask questions. And a couple of them said that they were going to incorporate those things also into their part of the tour. So, that's very gratifying to hear that.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing, because when we first started, they didn't even want to put the book in there.
We were talking to Michael Silverman, and he was saying when the book was first sent to them, and it goes through this committee, because they have to, vet everything that goes through to make sure it's worth, having in there that meets up to whatever standard they have for incoming material. And he didn't think it was going to make it. He thought they'd shoot it down because of, the position we've taken. But when they read through it, because it was done with resources and sightings of different places to validate what we're saying, they said, okay, yeah, because of that, we're willing to put the book on the shelf. And then later, when we were invited to come and speak to them, give us a place of prominence. So we earned our way into what we did. It wasn't given to us. It was, they had to, they had to make sure we were okay.
Yeah. because you guys got the royal treatment there. You really did. And it was nice to see, Mike was just, you couldn't have been more pleased for you guys there. Kept on bringing boxes of books for you guys to
so
sell.
nice.
And then they did that private tour for us, which was, it's amazing. It's, it's really, and that guy who, I can't remember his name, he was amazing. And, we put him on the podcast, and hope he gets the chance to see it, but super, super knowledgeable and interesting about everything about the island and those catacombs and everything. It was incredibly, incredibly interesting. And we started clipping that stuff out, and we put it on TikTok, and a lot of people are digesting it. And, we're getting a lot of great feedback just from like these 30-second minute clips and stuff like that. I don't know if you guys are on TikTok, but you guys are all over it now. So.
Ken, how do you feel about all of that after going there for the 50th anniversary and then going through this journey and now being recognized like this at Alcatraz?
Yeah, it is amazing. I will say, when we went out for the 50th, they treated us very nice. I could tell that the park ranger, the head one, who toured us around, he tried to be nice, but they really didn't kind of believe anything that we had to say. We were pretty much kind of, dismissed a little bit. They wanted to show respect for the family, though, which I appreciate that. But, over the years, they just really never kind of accepted our theory about what happened in our story. They just dismissed it and said that, we're just wishful thinking family members that really hope that our relatives survived the escape. But now and I even told Mike when he submitted the book out to them, I said, I would not hold my breath. They're not going to let us on that island, I'm telling you. And it was totally shocked. I had to eat crow on that one.
Yeah. Because we got nothing but like love feeling for you guys there. They couldn't have, every 5 feet, there was a picture of your book, a poster of your book. Your books were like layered everything. And they really rolled out the red carpet for you guys, which was nice. And I'm hoping you guys scored. Well, I know you scored a lot of new fans. We scored, we saw the podcast numbers go up just a little bit just from those things. And so I'm glad you were able to be, celebrated in that way. And who knows? I can't imagine you not going back there again and them inviting you back, especially for some of the things that we have planned.
I'm sure as new details come forward, and we'll probably be invited back again.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, Mike sent me, and we talked about this, there was a video of one of the inmates who was there up until 1960, I think he was, Bill Baker. Yep. I don't know how many years he was there officially, but he's like, I don't know if he's still alive now, but the video.
He was at Alcatraz the next day.
Did he come after us? Last day was Saturday, and he was coming back because he goes there from time to time, and he was going to be there on Sunday.
Yeah. So yeah, but the YouTube video you sent me was like from 7 years ago.
Yeah, 2017. Yeah.
And so just based upon his experiences, and he actually wrote a book too, and there was like over 300,000 views on YouTube over 7 years, which is, it's pretty good. But he was an interesting guy. He talked about a lot of the stuff that you guys have already told us about, but from a first person viewpoint, what the conditions were like. He talked about how, the food was really good because they also had to feed the guards with the same food. And the federal government was very flush at that point in time, which I thought was interesting. And they said, so they spared no expense as far as the federal prisons. And there was a lot of interesting stuff. They talked about 27 minutes in, he talks about the Anglin brothers. And people asked him, there was the one thing, they talked about the escapes. And then he goes, I know that's the escape you all really want to know about.
Well, I thought it was interesting, too. He talked about another man who escaped that was a friend of his who died in the bay. And they found his body.
Exactly.
Right. Well, all of the ones that tried to escape, they pretty much found their bodies if they died or if they, got caught. Other than the two before before my uncle and Frank Morris escaped, there was it Robert and Cole, who they never found either. There were talks of them actually making it down to Argentina, but yeah, everybody else they found. So you almost would have thought that if the three men had drowned in the bay, that at least one of them would have floated to the top. Somebody would have found a body or something that would have indicated that they didn't make it, but none of that was ever found.
Yeah. And he also talked about how these guys were really smart, that the Anglin brothers and the way they put together this whole escape, and that, and when people said did they think they made it and stuff like that, he goes, do you think after all the careful planning over a year and what they did to dig out of their cells, do all the stuff, that they wouldn't have had a plan when they got to the water?
Right.
He goes, these guys were smart. And he goes, in fact, he said, you had the smartest criminals in the world at Alcatraz.
Yeah, there's no way that they did that kind of planning, that detailed in what they were doing to get all the way down to the water and go, okay, now what do we do? No one can believe that.
Yeah.
No, makes no sense. Why would you go through that meticulous planning and be so adroit at getting out in the way that they did, and then not have a plan when you get to the bottom of the that makes, it's ludicrous. They wouldn't have done that.
I think Ken froze. Ken,
are you there?
Frozen? I think he's frozen. All right. Hopefully he'll log on and log back on. But Mike, what did you think about what Bill Baker said as far as, because one of the other interesting thing I thought he said was, he said that he goes, well, I do know for a fact that these guys were learning Spanish while they were in there.
Right.
And he goes, so I'm not sure if they made it to South America. Why would you do that?
What are they going to do? Get a book about Portuguese? Then it's like, okay, then you know exactly where they went. That makes no sense. Of course, Spanish makes sense. They would go to Mexico first, right? And everybody speaks Spanish in most of the countries around Brazil. Brazil is one of the few that's Portuguese.
So he'd done that presentation in 2017. So it was 2 years after Ken did his History Channel documentary. He was aware of it because he was asked about, them ending in Brazil. So he knew something about it. Either he saw about it directly or somebody told him. And because he knew, he didn't know the brothers directly because he left in 1960. They didn't arrive until 61, but he did know Frank Morris and Alan West. They were already there. And also Whitey Bulger. Whitey Bulger was there when he was there. So he knew some of the escapees. And he was very complimentary. He had nothing but, respect for what they did and how they did it. And that he says, oh, they absolutely escaped. He has no doubt about that. the part that he kind of questioned a little bit was the Spanish, that he was under the impression that they all spoke Spanish, but it was primarily Frank Morris. He was fluent in Spanish, and he'd even gotten a couple of Spanish books before the escape to brush up on his Spanish. And he said it didn't make sense to him that they would go to go to Brazil where they spoke Portuguese, and why learn Spanish and then go to Brazil? So he didn't have all of the information correct, that it was, as we've talked about many times, that they went to Mexico first, were there for a couple of years, then went down to Brazil later. So it was the latter part that he was like, well, because it didn't make sense to him that they would go to Brazil when they spoke Spanish, that he was a little like, I'm not sure exactly what happened. Did they survive? That part he didn't know, and he wasn't sure of, because of that little, in his mind, that inconsistency. But he just didn't have all the facts.
Yeah, he did say in that recording though that he believes that they left and they were free men.
Right.
He did say that.
Yeah, but I mean, it was pretty much common, or at least I think it was, from the way Whitey Bulger wrote it, that when Mickey Cohen was getting ready to leave, they were telling him, go to Brazil, marry a local, have one. So even back in 1962, during his time that he was about to leave, or 61, I mean, it was pretty common knowledge. If you were going to get out, flee to Brazil, not Mexico. I mean, even Mickey Cohen, had a house or a farm in Mexico, which we believe that the trio wound up at first. But even they were telling him, don't go to Mexico because they can bring you back. Go to Brazil. So I think it was a common knowledge in the prison at that time that if you ever made it out, that was the destination that you wanted to go to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where, after World War II, that's where a lot of the Nazis fled.
Right.
They all went to Brazil, Argentina,
Venezuela.
It was like.
And, I had someone on Facebook ask me a question one time, which I really thought about kind of hard and long, was, if they made it to Brazil, which we know they did, and they married and they have children, why not just kind of come forward and reveal yourself, to the family and to other people, because, you should be safe, from being extradited back into the United States. But there's two things there. One was they still had family members back in the States, and the FBI at that point in time was very adamant about, if any family members, ever knew where it happened and how they got out and where they went, they were subject to going to prison themselves. And then we heard, Art tell us, I don't know how true this really is, it might be true, I can suspect it being true, was that they've gone down into countries, even Brazil, and gotten people that they wanted to get out.
I'm sure they have.
Just because you are married and you have children didn't protect you from the U.S. government if they really wanted you.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that. I mean, if I was down there and I was hiding, I would protect my family. I wouldn't want them to get in trouble.
It's a roll of the dice.
And you just because there's no extradition treaty doesn't mean anything. I mean, I wouldn't trust it.
Well,
if they really want you,
right?
If they really want you, they're going to get you.
They're going to get you.
That's it.
So. And he almost kind of indicated that they've been down in there and kidnapped people to bring them back to the United States to face justice. So
I wouldn't.
They totally would.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But as we all know, that didn't happen.
No, it didn't.
Because it would have been all over the newspapers and all over the media, because they wouldn't have wanted to keep that secret at all.
Mm-mm.
That would have been a huge feather in their cap, which, leads us to the conspiracy theories that why they didn't go down there. And we know they did, but why didn't they pursue it? And then, we've heard Art say that they had, Interpol bolos be on the lookouts and that they would have popped up for anything. But as we know, they were living more than likely under assumed names and assumed different identities. And they wouldn't have, and I guarantee you, they kept their noses clean.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't. They probably didn't even jaywalk or do anything.
It's almost kind of like the story that's going on today with the Epstein files. It's almost like I've always said the FBI and the federal government has always known where John and Clarence and Frank Morris went. And I've always believed it was convenient to leave them where they were at. Just like these Epstein files. Everybody knows that that there were a client list. Everyone knows this, but for some reason, the government wants to keep it undercover. And I believe, in some ways, this is kind of like the same thing. They know there's something there, and they don't want the rest of the story to come out.
Yeah, it's Pandora's box.
Yes.
They don't want, because but for this story, it's 60 years old. It's like the JFK thing. It's just like at this point, who are you going to hurt other than you're going to mar the American history? Anybody who knows history and knows about JFK or all the things leading up, even stuff like, how we got into World War II, how FDR knew he wanted Pearl Harbor to get bombed because that would have forced us into the war. All these things that, have come out in history that, that kind of led to all this stuff. The government uses the government to their advantage and to leverage it. And if they have to let things happen, or they don't have to let things happen, they do. Because it's a matter of, because as we know, as time goes by, people forget. And even in this 24-hour news cycle, like this Epstein thing is gone. It's like a,
well, it's a political football now. But there's so many politicians on that list. There's a prince on that list. It's like, it's a lot of people on that list. Celebrities. I'm sure they all want it to go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They want it to be buried. And, because, gosh, I never would have even thought when we started down this road of writing this book that somehow JFK would be part of this story somehow. It wasn't until as we started digging and one, layer of the onion revealed something else. And then you go, oh my gosh, what's below that? And then, you start tying together all of these characters that are part of this story. And, you can now see, or at least I can, why they would want to keep it undercover. Why? And it started kind of making sense. Like, why in the world, when you had the best lead possible the next morning to follow, which was, Officer Chechi reporting the boat, why would you try to make that go away? I thought the whole purpose of this was to catch the criminal, and they're trying to bury it. So it's like, there's something doesn't smell right here. So.
Well, I think it all goes back, to me, it goes back to Mickey Cohen.
You're right. Mickey Cohen was the key to this whole story.
The fact that, as we all know, back in, in the 30s and 40s and even 50s, that these mobsters were politically tied. They had judges, they had politicians in their pocket, and that to me would be the only reason why he had something that the government wanted for him to get let out that way by a Supreme Court justice. To me, it doesn't make sense. That to me is like the most craziest thing I've ever heard. And the look on Art's face when I directly asked him, has that ever happened? He goes, nope, it has never happened. And has never happened since.
It never has happened since.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine, the Supreme Court even getting involved in something like this. Now, I could understand them maybe getting involved years later if it went to a local federal judge and then a district judge and then an appellate court and eventually makes its way all the way up to the Supreme Court, which would have been years, what would happen today. But for his lawyer to go directly to the Supreme Court and get the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to sign a criminal's bond to get out of prison, that is totally unheard of.
That's a brokered deal. They wanted something from Mickey, and he said, well, if you get me on the outside, I'll get you what you want. And they're saying, well, you're going to have to go back, but we'll reduce your sentence or something like that. Because he was out shortly after that. Didn't he get out like in 70 or something like that? or I can't remember when he was released.
It was in the early 70s. I mean, he was already pretty much kind of a paralyzed.
He was an invalid at this point, pretty much.
Yeah, he was pretty beat up from.
But I don't see anything that really makes sense for why they would let him out for a short period of time and then bring him back in, unless there was some sort of deal brokered, like they needed something. It was a quid pro quo, big time.
Well, and two, even his attack is crazy to me. And like, why would anyone want to attack Mickey Cohen? I mean, I know he's a mob boss, right? You would almost kind of think a mob boss is almost kind of has some type of protection when you're in prison. I mean, he still was pretty big. Why, after the assassination of JFK, did all of a sudden he become a target in prison? I mean, his attack in Atlanta wasn't the first time someone tried to kill him. According to Whitey Bulger, someone tried to stab him when he was in Leavenworth on his way to Atlanta. So it's
after JFK,
after the JFK killing. And so it's almost kind of like someone was trying to shut him up.
It's called tying up loose ends.
Tying up the loose ends. You're exactly right.
That's it. That's interesting. Because to me, that is like the center of all the deception in the government is Mickey Cohen.
Well, and he barely survived because he was beaten with a lead pipe and almost died. And there was a heroic rescue by the doctors to save his life. But he, like Ken said, he couldn't really walk much after that. There was a lot of paralysis and, just physical damage that was for the rest of his life. So he was lucky he made it. He because Whitey Bulger wasn't so lucky when he was eventually left alone. Now, of course, he was 89 at the time and in poor health. And he wasn't going to last much longer anyway. He'd already had several heart attacks, but still he was left alone. And then the 3 or 4 guys just killed him.
For him, though, I don't think that was like they're just tying up a loose end. I think they were just trying to make – they were going to make their bones, and it was like
they were going to get even with him.
Yeah, he had a lot of enemies. Yeah,
he had a lot of enemies, but he was at that point most of his enemies were dead. And it's like because I met Kevin Weeks, his hitman, and also Pat Nee, who was part of the Winter Hill gang as well. And they actually, at the time, it was right when the Whitey Bulger trial was happening. I was filming with Pat Nee, and then we actually followed Pat Nee right into the federal courthouse. And he was afraid that he went to go give his witness testimony, and he was afraid he may not leave the courthouse. So he was like, because I forget why they were he had to give some sort of testimony. Anyway, getting back to Mickey Cohen, as far as him being the linchpin to all of this cover up and conspiracy about what happened to your uncles.
But something else that was it's always kind of crazy to me was in the FBI files when they go back after Alfred's death, and they, for whatever reason, they decide they want to go back and interview the cellmate of Alfred. And he agrees to talk to them. Well, in the FBI files, it starts off, and he says this, which is kind of crazy. I never understood why he would say this. But he agreed to talk to them as long as they never revealed his name because he feared for his life. And I was like, why in the world would you fear for your life if you're talking about Alfred? Like,
right. That makes no sense.
Why is this? Why would you fear for your life because you're fixing to? But then as you start, listening to his testimony, he's the one who brings in Mickey Cohen. He's the one who talks about Uncle Man coming to see Alfred right after the escape, telling Alfred that they made it, and then telling him that Mickey Cohen is the one who set them up with a boat. So, oh my gosh, I mean, if it had not been for that interview, we would probably never have known about Mickey Cohen and his involvement. Then you start going down this rabbit hole of how the heck did Uncle Man know Mickey Cohen? I mean, why would he even say that?
There's no way. How would your uncle from farm in Florida
Oh my God.
with no money
With
and
no education.
no
Didn't even know how to
education.
read and write. How did he know Mickey Cohen?
Right.
And
Makes
why
no
would
sense.
he say that? It's crazy. And then, you know, then you like kind of go down well, why in the world would Mickey Cohen, even if my Uncle Man said that Mickey Cohen, and that's true, why would Mickey Cohen help my two uncles? What was in it for him? I mean, what was he trying to accomplish? And then, like I said, you're right, Rob. Mickey Cohen was the key to this whole story and us unraveling the true story about what happened.
Well, I think it was quid pro quo. We'll get you out, but you're going to be indebted to me for life, and you have to go do the plan that they originally had before the crackdown.
And it had to do, you know, a lot of these things occurred in sequences that, you know, at first you would have thought, well, you know, that didn't really kind of impact the story, but it did. Like the death of Alfred. If it had not been for the death of Alfred, then they would not have ever gone back and interviewed his cellmate. But what caused them to go back and do that? And I've asked this question to Art one time. The 17 volumes of the Alcatraz documents that the FBI did, what in the world does the death of Alfred have to do with the escape from Alcatraz?
It's back to school season, and Clorox is donating 2 million disinfecting wipes to classrooms across America. Because back to school means things can get a little bit messy. Just ask second grade teacher Mr. Torres.
Put me and just one Clorox wipe on a team? We can take on crayon smudges, sticky fingerprints on every surface, sneezes on the door handle, juice box explosion by the sink, snack crumbs, and don't even get me started on the bathroom passes.
Clorox disinfecting wipes. Teacher's #1 wipe.
Think about it. Bathroom passes.
Clean feels good. Based on unit sales data.
The #1 selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, onabotulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Your burger is served. And this is our finest Pepsi Zero Sugar. Its sweet profile perfectly balances the savory notes of your burger.
That is one perfect combination. Burgers deserve Pepsi.
But, and it's in there in detailed form. And he said, well, you know, it's because he was a member of the family and they were recording it down. I was like, no, that's not true, because my grandmother died when the case was still open, and that's not in the FBI files. Why in the world did they think it was important to put the death of Alfred into the FBI files that's related to the escape from Alcatraz? Because it's part of that escape. Mm-hmm. They know that he told my mom and my dad and his brother, he knew where they were at. And for whatever reason, the FBI felt like they needed to record this down. And that's the reason why they went back and interviewed his cellmate. And that's the reason.
They were hoping that he shared some information with them.
Yes, and he did. And now it started kind of going back. So they had knowledge in 1963 that Uncle Man went to talk to Alfred, and they had this story, in the FBI files that we only discovered in the mid 2000s. No wonder they were polygraphing Uncle Man. We can never understand why were they targeting him and no other member of the family. It's because they had knowledge that he came to see his brother and told him what they told him, or he told Alfred about, and they're the only ones who knew this, and so they knew Uncle Man knew more than what he was saying. But the rest of no one else knew what was going on.
He couldn't have hung on just for a few more years, huh?
He was a character. You would have.
I remember we talked to his sons.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you talk to Steve, it's pretty much like talking to Uncle Man. He was that kind of a person.
That's great.
So to clarify for them, let me say that again. So to clarify for the audience, do you think that Mickey Cohen went to visit Uncle Man?
If he didn't go himself, he sent someone to see him. I don't know if Mickey would have taken the chance to actually. He was probably being followed by the FBI, but I'm assuming he probably had people to go with him or to go down for him. And he might have got in touch with Fred Breezy at that time. For him and Fred was undoubtedly, there is a connection between Fred Breezy and Mickey Cohen. And I say that only because if Fred is flying them out of the country, which we know that from Fred's testimony, or his interview with the Anglin family, he's flying them into Mexico when he said they landed the plane to refuel, just north of Mexico. So just think about this. If you're flying into Mexico and you've never been to wherever you're going to before, and you go, oh, we're low on gas. Somebody start looking for gas for us to pull over and get gas. I mean, this was a route that he undoubtedly had gone before. He knew where he was. You just don't fly a plane into a country like Mexico without knowing where you're going and knowing where you can stop and get gas at. This isn't like driving a car and you're looking for a gas station. I mean, you have to know the airport that you're going to. Yeah. And you have to know the destination that he had been there before. So just from that knowledge and knowing that Mickey Cohen had a farm in Mexico, he was working for Mickey Cohen the whole time.
Well, and one of the things that we've discussed before, again, according to Fred Breezy, who gave us a lot of very important information, was that when they got to the airport before they flew down to Mexico, was they were given money, they were giving clothes, and they were giving new IDs, fake IDs. Well, who has the resources, the financial, and who has the ability to falsify papers?
Exactly.
Ken's family's not going to be able to have that ability. They wouldn't.
No. That comes from a mobster with a lot of connections.
Right.
So that's saying that they're going to give them fake IDs. That there's also a destination for them, that there's already a plan in effect, that Mickey had been in contact with probably Robert, or at least somebody that was in contact with Robert, talked to Mickey Cohen, and he set this whole thing up. He made all these arrangements, and so they got their documents and money and clothes, and then they flew down to Mexico to just outside Mexico City, most likely to Mickey Cohen's farmhouse that he'd been to many times. And when we were doing research for the book, because he was under investigation a lot, there was all these, charges against him from time to time in Los Angeles. And there's this photo, I think it was taken in 1958, of him at the airport flying down to Mexico because he was just want to get away from kind of all the craziness for a while. So Mexico was publicly kind of his go-to place that he would, when he wanted to get away, that's where he would go. But then, of course, there was also for his criminal operation. That was in Mexico as well. Were they in the same place? Were they near each other? Who knows? But these things were prearranged. That had all been set up, and there were, as you said, there was the expectation of, I'll get you out of jail, but now you're going to help me in Mexico, which he had wanted to do before all this happened in the late 1950s when they drove out there. Was to most likely to set up his marijuana farm in Mexico, probably Tijuana. And so that was already in the works, and it just got delayed a few years. And then probably later in Brazil, there was the same thing. And I think we brought this up a few weeks ago, that in the FBI report, it talked about one of Mickey Cohen's guys going down to Brazil for some unknown reason. What's he doing in Brazil? And
where does it say that?
This is in the FBI report for Mickey Cohen, which I've filed for a Freedom of Information Act on that document. So I'm still waiting for it to be hopefully given to me, because it is.
How'd you find out about it?
Pardon?
How'd you find out about it?
Well, I got the full FBI file on Mickey Cohen, and I just did a search. I said, I looked for Mexico and I looked for Brazil. And sure enough, there was a document in there where the FBI had been surveilling while they were watching Mickey Cohen. Some individual, and his name is redacted, had been down to Mexico and to Brazil. And every time he came back, he would go straight to Mickey's house. So I don't know who this individual is, and I'm hoping to find out soon if they'll give it to me. And, but it's like Mike said, when Fred Breezy said that when the brothers, actually he said that John was telling him this, that when they got to shore, they had new clothes. They left their clothes on the bank, which means the clothes that they had made out for scuba suits or for water, for suits, wetsuits, that they had new clothes, they had an ID, they had a passport, they had cash in their pocket. It's the exact same thing that is recorded down that Mickey Cohen gave Candy Barr when he took her out of the country into Mexico. He gave her an ID, he gave her cash, and he gave her new clothes. The exact same thing that Fred Breezy said was waiting for them when they got to land.
And a safe house.
And a safe house.
He could do that. He was a mob boss. They're connected all over the world. It's not just, in the United States. Makes sense.
What I think is interesting is that and this is where kind of I'm alluding to the fact that Mickey had so many political connections and high up, that I think when Kennedy got in the office, or when he was running for office, and then he was a congressman or something like that, and when they were really clamping down on organized crime, I think that is what shook everything up really hard, like a snow globe. And maybe that was one of the things that, because as we know, the Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren, the commission is named after him, after the assassination.
I mean, you can't even make that up.
So obviously, and we know what a kangaroo court thing that was. They knew it back then, and now it's even more obvious. I can go down that rabbit hole. But I think there was some sort of quid pro quo between him, Warren, and Mickey, that someone owed someone else a favor, and that Mickey knew a lot of information, and they had to reciprocate, had to do something, even if it was for a short period of time, and whether or not he was getting out to destroy evidence of his connection to high-ranking officials, or, and in the process of that, he was able to organize obviously I'm just speculating that, but I'm trying to think the way these kind of deals back then would have happened, because there's no reason for him to be bonded out by Warren.
No.
It just does to me. I just don't understand how that happens without some sort of quid pro quo, that Mickey had something either on Warren or for Warren or something like that. It's all about leverage,
Yes.
And it's like, why? They already got him in prison for tax evasion. The Kennedys got him. That's like they did with Al Capone. And so it's why would you relinquish and let someone out like that on such a high level for how long was he out? 6 months?
Almost 7.
I mean, that's a long period of time to get a lot done.
Yes.
You know?
Well, and the crazy thing in his FBI file, once his appeal is turned down and they're getting ready to, he's now going back to prison, they were going to allow him to stay in the state of California and stay in prison there at that local prison. And he refused, and he wanted to go back to Alcatraz. In fact, it even says in there that he requested to go back to Alcatraz.
Well, Alcatraz, based upon the Bill Baker guy, he says it was not a bad place to be. I mean, he literally said the food was great. Everybody had their own cells. You were there with the who's who of the badasses. So everyone kept in line.
But if you wanted to deliver a message to John Anglin, and you're in another prison, you couldn't take the chance of writing a letter to him.
No.
You needed to go back to Alcatraz and tell him in person what that plan was.
Oh, absolutely.
And, that's the reason why I'm really hoping with all of these letters that I have written over the years is going to pay off at some point in time. And we're going to get access to all of those letters that were written to John and Clarence when they were in Alcatraz, because guess who was writing those letters? Even though they came from my grandmother and they were, said to my grandmother, it was Uncle Man and his wife, my Aunt Billy, is the one who constructed those letters. My grandmother and grandfather couldn't read or write.
Got it.
So Billy, and actually Uncle Man couldn't read or write either. But my Aunt Billy, his wife, is the one who wrote all of those letters. And so I really would like to see what's in those letters. For some reason, the FBI felt like they couldn't give them back to the family. And
maybe they detected some sort of kind of code that they were speaking.
I don't know, but I do know they have them today. Still have them today.
Yeah. Didn't Art say he's seen him?
Art said a lot of things. I'm not sure. I believe a lot of things that Art has said. He said that he has actually seen the pouch and all of the photos and all of the letters. And he even says that there's a document where they interviewed Officer Chechi, but that's not in the files anywhere. And he also says that there is an interview that they did with Alfred, which that's not in the file either. So I don't know how true it is, but he keeps saying that we will never get those letters back. I don't know why. Why in the world would they want to hold on to family letters that the family wrote John and Clarence? Because all the letters that the brothers wrote to Alfred, all of the letters that the family wrote to Alfred are gone. Mysteriously got stolen out of the back of a car. And we know from the interview that they did with Alfred's cellmate that he said that the brothers had contacted him and let him know that they were planning an escape from Alcatraz. So somehow they wrote in code in a letter to Alfred, and Alfred knew they were planning an escape, and he didn't really think that it was going to be possible to be done. But they communicated to each other. So and Uncle Man knew this code that they did with each other. So whoever wrote those letters to John and Clarence, I would love to see what's inside of those letters.
Well, but one of the letters you did get back, and that was the one written by your grandmother to, I think it was to Clarence, I believe.
Yeah, it was actually written by my Aunt Billy also.
Right.
But my grandmother can't write, so.
Right, but she was dictating, I would imagine.
On June the 11th.
Yeah, and it was dated on June the day of the escape. Of course, it didn't arrive at Alcatraz. It probably got there a couple of weeks later. But somehow Michael Dykes had that letter and gave Ken and his mother a copy of it on the 50th anniversary. So where did that letter come from?
Exactly. I mean, if they don't exist, they keep saying, "Oh, they got misplaced." No one knows what happened to them. but then somehow he's got the ability to make a Xerox copy of the last letter ever sent to Clarence.
Yeah, that
Wow,
makes
you
no
just
sense.
dated yourself, Ken. Xerox copy.
Do people even know what
Well,
that is?
back in 2012, it was Xerox.
A mimeograph.
Microfiche.
It was faxed.
It was faxed.
Fax.
It came in on a BlackBerry.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of the FBI, you had some interesting information this week from someone that sent you a message, which, you know, it's always interesting when we get these little messages.
Was it from a listener?
You know, I guess it was someone who follows us on Facebook and listens to the podcast. And when I mentioned about us going into that we knew what the house was, and we were going to hopefully go in and investigate the house and see what's in there. No one's been in there since. She was letting me know that I believe she's on another podcast, or she follows another podcast, and that they had found out that the FBI was, and I believe it was some type of a true crime podcast that she's on or either involved in, that they found out that the FBI was listening to their podcast, and she was warning us that it's very possible that we have FBI agents watching our podcast. And I was like,
I'm sure they are.
I don't already know.
we have law enforcement officials watching because we do live investigations. I mean, we had, one of our live investigations is one case. We had a federal agency actually listening to it and actually took over the case because of the information. Yeah. They were like, you guys.
And another law enforcement agent was listening to it and referred us to a victim's family.
Exactly. So these people need that, we can't help them, but these people can help.
Listen.
So it's like, trust me, our phones have been tapped. We know, and I'm sure, but listen, we're basically, you've put everything in the book.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're just talking about stuff that's in the book and we've learned some stuff afterward, but 90% of what we talk about in this podcast is all in the book. And we're just analyzing the data that you guys have come up with. And we've come up with some other things, but hopefully those will come to fruition. And but as far as going down to Brazil, you've already been there.
Yes.
So it's not like this is something new.
No. And the other thing I wanted to do is talk about Candy Barr, because I find her really an interesting character, especially for her time, and the connection with the Kennedy connection. And maybe we'll get a little bit more. I know we've talked about it before, but we haven't really gone a little deeper. So hopefully we're going to have some guests on who can kind of speak to her a little bit more and see what else we can learn about her, because I think she's an interesting character as a woman at that time to be hanging out with these mobsters. And like you said, like Mickey Cohen gave her a new identity, gave her clothes, gave her money, did the same MO that, he did with the Anglin brothers, and they met her. So there is this connection. She was in Mexico. She flipped on Mickey Cohen. If she didn't flip on him, he wouldn't have been in jail. At the same time, he wouldn't have been at Alcatraz.
She wouldn't have got pardoned and got her record expunged by Mr. Connolly, Governor Connolly.
And she's the connection between Jack Ruby and Mickey Cohen.
Exactly.
The one who introduces, according to her, Jack Ruby to Mickey Cohen. So now all of a sudden you've got this weird 3-triangle connection. And then she's also the one who says that she saw Oswald with Jack Ruby coming out of Mexico. I mean, okay, guys, and now you've got Earl Warren tied into this story. He's the one who signs Mickey Cohen out of prison. And then you've got Governor Connolly who, pardons Candy Barr and he's sitting in the front seat and gets struck by the magic bullet. So it's like,
and his son retrieved those bullets after the fragments in his leg after he died.
But that is a strange story too. I remember you telling me that, but I thought the magic bullet, when I've seen pictures,
the magic bullet is perfect. It's not even
perfect.
It's not even
fragments off of it.
This is the stuff. He kept the fragments from the shooting in his body until he was died, and then they cut it out, and then his son was the one who was given to his son, and no one knows.
If you look at the magic bullet, and I've seen a picture of it, it's a whole bullet. There's no fragments off of it.
No.
So undoubtedly, if he's got fragments in his body, that came from another bullet.
We got to talk to Stuart. I haven't told him that stuff yet. If he's listening, give me a call.
I mean, that doesn't even make sense because
he's got some theories. He's got some evidence as well that he came up with.
But when you tie all of these people together, I don't know how you don't come up with this conspiracy theory that is just beyond belief. How all of this is tied together, and somehow it's tied in with the escape from Alcatraz with John, Clarence, and Frank Morris. Somehow this story has got a relationship to it. I don't know if, me and Mike's debated and talked about, is it possible that Jack Ruby took Oswald down to the farm where John and Clarence and Frank Morris was at that time? And was the plan to ferry him down there once the shooting was done? And of course, we know he gets caught, and then, before he can talk, Jack Ruby kills him. So,
all on television. All this stuff happens on television.
Well, and
very publicly.
Is it possible that if they ever brought John and Clarence and Frank Morris publicly and they captured them, could they say, "Oh yeah, we saw Jack Ruby and Oswald come to visit us"? Boy,
I gotta do a binge. I gotta watch again. I want to watch the JFK, the Oliver Stone, and also the Jack Ruby, the Ruby thing that Danny Aiello was, and he played Jack Ruby.
Yes,
I gotta watch those things again just to kind of refresh, because now.
But you have a point, Ken. Is that why they just let them be? Let them stay wherever they are. Stay away.
They know too much.
Yeah, what would it do to the story of what would it do to the JFK story if they had brought them in and somehow John, Clarence, or Frank Morris said, "Yeah, Jack Ruby came to see us and he was with this guy Oswald"? What would that have done to the story?
I don't think if they had found them, your uncles would have survived.
No,
they would have. Yeah, I think they would have happened upon an accident.
Yeah.
Well, if they really knew where they were, they would go. And if they knew information like that, that would make them loose ends. And I think, and this is just
kind of like the lady reporter who was interviewing Jack Ruby, who was about to break some story, and then all of a sudden she shows up dead.
Right.
So,
and it's not like that
associated with this story somehow winds up dead at some point.
And this stuff happens today too. There was that one reporter, I think it was from Rolling Stone, who did that critical article, who was stuck with General McChrystal in Afghanistan, and they couldn't fly him out after he interviewed him, and he was with them for like a week. And that's when General McChrystal, and he was hanging out with these guys, and he overheard these guys bad-mouthing Obama and doing all this, saying all this, and he put all that in his article. That guy died, I can't remember how long, I can't remember his name, like a couple of years after. His car went out of control and hit a tree. And that's when they said that, they have ways of, now technology where they can control people's cars. And so he mysteriously died that way.
Well, if you, I can't remember the reporter's name. She was a famous reporter who was being granted an interview with Jack Ruby. And Jack Ruby even told her, well, I believe it, the way the story was in the courtroom, turned around to her and said, "If you really knew all the people involved in this," and she was going to do an interview. I can't remember her name, but the way that she died, they found her, was very similar to the way that Marilyn Monroe died. They found her like in a hotel with pills and nude, and it was just crazy.
Well, they say that's one of the reasons that the Epstein files haven't been released, is because it's like there's just too much stuff in there and connects too many powerful people that it's gonna, they're saying it's like they're saying it's for the victims' sake, that they don't want, because they have to identify more victims and they want to keep that. But I'm thinking
I mean, that could be true too. You don't want to revisit that if you were a victim of that horrible thing.
I know.
I mean, that's a horrible thing.
Well, you know, if there's no client list, then why do they have his accomplice in prison? The lady. Where's her name?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, why is she in prison if there's nothing to be in prison for?
Yeah.
And she even came out, what I understand, the other day and said that she's ready to divulge the client list.
And
so now I'm sure her life is on the line.
There was an article today saying that her cellmate, who was that was released, she did an article and she said she's going to end up just like Jeffrey.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah, there's some power. So I can understand, you know, the John, Clarence, and Alfred, the Alcatraz story. Why would you try to bury all of these leads at the very beginning? You know, you've got, to me, the best lead they ever had was Officer Chechi at the very beginning. Because just like Mike said, they could have easily found the boat the very next day if they had just followed up on easy leads. And for whatever reason, they tried to bury it. And now I believe we know why. So
it's a deep pool.
It's
and we're
a
still
deep dive. Yep.
It's going to make a great movie.
It really is. It's going to be amazing.
Yep.
All right, guys.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.